salon and told me that she'd found her people there. She is speaking for the first time tonight at the salon, is in the future going to MC a salon, and then after that initiate a salon of her own in China, along with some of the other cities that we have there.
Wow.
So this is your big time in front of everyone.
Great.
And Julie is going to incite some amazing debate for us to engage in by giving us a download about education.
Yay. Thank you.
Wow, can we give it up for Julia right now?
Can we get up with Julia? Would that be better? Yeah, that'd be nice. Okay, great. I'm so sorry. Okay. Hi everyone. Thank you, Adric, for the introduction. This is my first salon. It actually might work better now because I can't see any of your faces, so I'm like a lot less nervous and afraid of being judged. Let me give like a little bit of introduction about myself and like what my relationship with the education system is. I was born in China. I spent a lot of my elementary school years there. I was cracked under like the very harsh like Chinese testing system. Then my parents got tired of that and realized I was unhappy every day. And so even though my dad had a government job in a very high position, he gave that all up to go to the most uncorrupt place on earth, which is Canada. That's questionable now that Harper's there. But we did go to Canada, and my mom went there to Calgary, Alberta for my primary education. Alberta is known for fantastic primary education, and so we went there. So I grew up in terms of like junior high school under the Canadian system, and then for my last couple years of high school, I moved down here to Gun High School, like right there, to finish my testing system. I think I could be considered a successful child brought up under the traditional mechanism of education. I got into Harvard, I went there, spent my first year there, and I really did not like my experience. And so that's why I quote unquote, I'm not dropping out because I'm just rediscovering what that education means to me. But I did become a Thiel finalist, and then they do the whole like you should drop out, whatever. So maybe under their kind of influence, I'm now taking a leave of absence. I'm trying to build, I guess, the roots to a potential alternative education system I'm going to try to launch up in China at least within the next 10 years. Because as we all know, education is slow, and that's why I feel like I have to start now, even though I'm only 19, because I wish to be alive when I can actually see some results. Great, so I've experienced, that's a little bit of background about me, about kind of like the things that I've experienced and things that I've watched along the way. For this past summer, I've been traveling across like here, Canada, and China, and trying to get some infrastructure or some sort of system set up that could potentially provide an alternative education system. And then the impetus behind all of this is that I find something very wrong with our current system. That's the only reason why I would even inspire to do something else in the first place. And so kind of the branch of my talk today is that I would like to basically give you guys my opinion and my current perspective on what I think is wrong with our education system, and then I give 2 reasons or concepts that I think how we can improve that. And then I know you guys are going to have a lot of opinions on that, which is why when I told him, I'm like, Adric, I should just do a debate because I know these guys are going to like, have a whole bunch of responses to give to each other. And so then afterwards, I was hoping to break up into kind of like a debatey style format, and then I can help moderate while you guys can discuss some issues back and forth. Cool. So I guess on to the content of my talk. So in 1892, in the United States of America, there is this organization called the Committee of 10. And basically everything we have come to know about contemporary high school education, Thank you. Stems from that committee of 10 people. The committee of 10, there's like faculty members, like really impressive people, government people who came together and each led a committee on a variety of other people to develop a set and a uniform like American high school system. Obviously, education did not start there. Education started from the very ground roots of when we were just human beings. And I'm sure that has come to evolve over a great amount of time. But institutionalization of education and standard and uniformed like offerings of education stemmed from around that time. That was 123 years ago. Let me read to you what they decided at that time. They decided that education should be 12 years, with 8 years in elementary and 4 years in high school. They decided that English, math, history, and civics were the core courses to be taught. And they even told us that the progression of sciences should be taught from biology to chemistry to physics.
Wow. What year was that?
123 years ago. And
Oh
so
my God.
I want you guys to think about now, like, what did you go through in high school? Like,
Can I start the debate right now?
traditional high school, in
Hold
case you were
on.
homeschooled.
No, traditional high school. Just something I heard. I'm not sure it's true because I haven't found references in the internet, but it was a professor in some university, so he might have known what he talked about how Socrates viewed education. And his prime problem with the education of ancient Greece was that students were taught to memorize and not to learn, so they can only
Not to
solve
think.
the problems that they can see now and not future problems that they might encounter. That was almost 3,000 years ago. Now think about your high school experience.
Exactly.
The Greeks were advanced back then.
And that's not the end of it. Okay, the end of it is in Canada they have like grades 1 to 6 is elementary, and then like 7 to 9 is junior high, and then 3 years of high school. So basically one change in year. And guess what? They still teach math and like English and history and civics, and they teach in order of biology, chemistry, and physics. That's Canada. And in China, well, surprise, it's the same thing, that you have elementary school from 1 to 6th grade, and then junior high from 7 to 9, and then high school from 10, 11, and 12. And they also teach English and math. Even China you have to learn English in order to graduate from a Chinese high school, where, you know, you're supposed to technically be speaking Mandarin. And so this kind of decision made by this committee of 10 has somehow pervasively expanded over the entire globe and essentially taken over all high school curriculum ever to be currently implemented. And that's not even the problem. The problem is that it reaches both up and down. And so a problem I have with this, like, I think there's nothing wrong with trying to structure learning and making it into a curriculum format. What I find is wrong is they take this idea and then they bring it all the way down to elementary school. And they make it all the way go up into college, and they make it into a feeder system. So if you look at what the children in elementary school in China right now, which by the way, they get up at 6 a.m. to go to pre-classes, and then they go to class, which ends at 5, and then they go to post-class, which goes until 10 p.m. at night. This is what my cousin does. She's in grade 6 in elementary school. So that's China has like a whole different set of problems. But like they're essentially taking like high school curriculum and then just making you learn it at a slower, more unbearable pace when you're very little, so you can slightly build up to high school. The quote that the committee said at that time, which I feel a lot of people, including myself, has a huge problem with, is that every subject which is taught at all in secondary school should be taught in the same way, in the same extent, to every pupil, so long as he pursues it, no matter what the probable destination of the pupil may be, or at what point his education is to cease. And that is my biggest issue, is that this concept planted the seed in Americans' minds that education is for no child left behind. And that education is for the average and for the middle line. And the point of education was not to make you excel or be good or be proud of what you like to do and are passionate in, but it's to be the same. Because every child needed to receive the same education. And so they kind of took equality of education and just made that into the most horrible sense of the word I can think of. It should be opportunity, as in like you have the opportunity to receive basic education. Not that every person who receives education needs to be the same. And so the problem with that on the upper end is that now all learning has become university oriented. As in like the reason why you learn all these things, they even wrote it later on when there's like an algebra project, is that to help you get into college or to prepare you for the standardized testing system. And then it also goes down, because if you look at like elementary school curriculum now, what are you learning in elementary schools? The same thing, English, math, civics, and they teach them in a specific order. The goal of our education system right now is retainment of knowledge. And I find that a huge problem, because what I think it should really be doing is instilling capability and then sparking passion. I can go into that a little bit later. And so why is retainment of knowledge, I think, a silly thing? I think, especially now, in our like current technological world, basically knowledge itself is not really all that useful. You can find it, and that's the key point. Is the ability to like just open your smartphone and know like the keywords to type on Google. That is like the most important thing. Maybe back in the day, like a couple hundred years ago, the person who could remember the most elements on the periodic table was like the biggest winner. As in, like, you go into the company, everybody just asks you because you were the encyclopedia. But that's no longer the case. Everybody here, as long as you have a phone or some kind of technological plug-in to society, you're able to access all that knowledge. And so retainment of knowledge should no longer be the focus of our education system, even though it currently still is. And so that needs to change. If we look back at the Algebra Project, which was founded in 1989, that was the project that essentially took the Committee of 10 and stretched it into algebra. And I actually think this is one of the reasons why a lot of people don't like math, is because they implemented this kind of system into schools. And basically they said, well, every kid has to learn math. And if you go look at the reason why, they said, in order so that they can participate in high school math and for college entrance. They wrote that in their very report on why kids should learn algebra, and they implemented that. That was their biggest goal throughout all of United States education. And so what do you know? Now we have algebra in elementary school. I'm not saying that that inherently I don't think is a bad cause, but I guess the motives that drive that across and the results that are currently coming out of our kids who hate algebra is really saddening. And so what is the answer to all this? At least my answer, in my opinion, to all this. Two things, as I said: instilling capability and being able to spark passion. So what do I mean by capability? Right now when we think of IQ, we think of things like, how many math numbers can you memorize? Or how many geographical puzzles can you put together? But for anyone who's heard of Howner-Gardner's multiple intelligence tests, you'll know that there's a lot of things that are much more fundamental to who you are, and you can train when you're much younger, rather than these kind of knowledge-based things. So for example, he talks about things like linguistics, logical and mathematical skills, musical skills, body kinesthetic, spatial visual skills, interpersonal and intrapersonal. And these things are, for example, things I think that are very core to who you are. They're abilities and capabilities which should be and can be developed through different course designs. And I think instead of having math and science, you should have a logical mathematical class. Instead of having an arts class or a music class, you can just have a class that trains you in these various abilities that are core to who you are as a human being. And then he calls these intelligences, but I think these are more capabilities. And especially interpersonal, intrapersonal skills. These are not just things that you can test on, but things that interbreed into who you are and how you will grow. And then the second part I think that we need to do is sparking passion. And then I talked to someone who's doing research at a motivation lab. I can't see her right now, but I think that's super cool. I think the key right now is to grasp passion and motivation, and it's the fact that our current school systems are forcing a lot of things on children and not letting them interplay playing with learning. And so then they're decreasing they're increasing the external motivation, so awards, tests, grades, which directly decreases your internal motivation to learn, to discover about the world, and to discover yourself. So my ideal would be to find some education system which, instead of math and science as the courses, tries to instill values and train you in the very core functions of who you are. So logic capabilities, or as we mentioned earlier, number sense, cultivating these kind of things that give you the capability to do things and not just make you memorize knowledge. Because once you have the capability to do something, the knowledge comes fast. You've just got to learn how to acquire it. And then inspiring passion. So finding something that they're super interested and super passionate about. And that goes back to one of the responses that Raphael said. Adric said that people have different passions, that Adric might just like money, whereas his brother likes something else. And you should go by the kid's passion in order to let them love the knowledge area and become experts at that and contribute back to your world. Because at the end of the day, what you see are most huge changes and most ideas come from individuals. And then they manage to convince a whole group of people to go along with them. And then comes societal change. And so we need to be able to not let these individuals become average in our current school system, but give them wings so they can fly. And I think that's the whole point of education. Okay. Yay!
Wow.
That's my own perspective. That's my summary of why I think education is wrong. And then my two responses to that. I can hold it now. Thank you. And now I'd love to open up the floor for debate. I can moderate, so if you have a comment, just raise your hand, and then I can call on you, and then I'll say some comments after you talk, and then we can back and forth. Thanks for the videographers. I don't know if this is necessary anymore. This might take a long time.
I propose that instead of a debate, we do responses, because we
disagree.
Where
I said that only.
Just a proposal. It's up to you. But what we found in the past is that when you ask people to